"We can't come to your graduation, sweetie. We're buying your sister a Tesla that weekend and the dealership is 3 hours away. You understand, right? It's a big purchase. We need to be there for her." My mother's voice on the phone was casual, almost dismissive, like she was explaining why she couldn't make it to a casual lunch, rather than the culmination of 4 years of brutal work at one of the most prestigious universities in the world. I stood in my tiny dorm room at Harvard, acceptance letter to the ceremony in one hand, phone in the other, trying to process what I was hearing. "You're buying Emma a Tesla," I repeated slowly, my brain struggling to make sense of the math. "An $80,000 car?" "Closer to 90 with the upgrades she wants, actually." My father's voice joined in. Apparently I was on speakerphone. "But she's graduating from community college and we want to celebrate her achievement. Plus she needs reliable transportation for her new job at the mall." I almost laughed. Almost. Because the absurdity was so profound, it circled back around to being darkly funny. My sister Emma was graduating from community college with an associate's degree in general studies after taking 3 years to complete a 2-year program. I was graduating from Harvard with a computer science degree, a 4.0 GPA, and 3 entrepreneurial ventures that were already generating serious revenue. And my parents were choosing to skip my graduation, to buy her a luxury vehicle while I'd been taking the bus for 4 years because they said they couldn't afford to help me with a car. But before I tell you what happened at that Harvard graduation ceremony, and trust me, what happened was absolutely devastating for my parents in the best possible way. You need to understand how I got there, and why this moment of casual dismissal was just the latest in a lifetime of being treated as less important than my older sister. My name is Jordan Mitchell, and I'm 22 years old. The phone call from my parents happened 3 weeks before my Harvard graduation, and it was the moment I finally accepted something I'd been avoiding acknowledging for years. My parents didn't actually value me. They loved me in some abstract parental way, but they didn't respect me, didn't prioritize me, and had spent my entire life making it crystal clear that my sister Emma was more important, more worthy of investment, more deserving of their time and resources. I need to take you back to understand how this pattern developed, because it's important for you to see that this wasn't just about a car or a graduation. It was about 2 decades of consistent, documented favoritism that had shaped every major moment of my life. Emma was born first, and from what I can piece together from family stories and old photos, she was the golden child from day one. Outgoing, socially confident, conventionally pretty in the way that makes relatives coo and strangers compliment. My parents were young when they had her, mid-20s, still figuring out life, and she became the center of their universe. I came along 4 years later, and apparently I was a surprise they hadn't planned for. I've heard the story enough, times at family gatherings, told like it's funny rather than devastating. We thought we were done after Emma, and then Jordan came along and we had to start all over. Always with a laugh, like my existence was an inconvenient plot twist in their life story rather than, their actual child. From early on, I was different from Emma in ways that confused and disappointed my parents. She was social and interested in fashion and popularity and all the things my mother understood and valued. I was quiet, bookish, fascinated by how things worked, more likely to be found taking apart electronics than playing with dolls or obsessing over clothes. When Emma wanted to take dance classes and gymnastics and join every social activity available, my parents enthusiastically paid for all of it and rearranged their schedules to accommodate. When I asked for a computer programming class at age 10, my father said it seemed like a waste of money for something I'd probably lose interest in quickly. Spoiler alert, I didn't lose interest. I taught myself to code using free online resources and library computers, staying after school to use the computer lab when ours at home was Emma's homework time. By age 12, I'd built my first website. By 14, I was doing freelance web development for small businesses. By 16, I'd saved enough from my freelance work to buy my own laptop, used, but mine. But none of that impressed my parents the way Emma's social successes did. When Emma made the cheerleading squad, we had a celebration dinner. When I won a regional coding competition with a prize of $1,000, my mother said, "That's nice," and went back to helping Emma pick out a homecoming dress. The financial disparity became more obvious as we got older. Emma got a car at 16. Nothing fancy, but a reliable used Honda that my parents bought for her birthday. When I turned 16, I asked about a car and was told the family couldn't afford another vehicle right now, but I could use Emma's car when she wasn't using it. Except Emma was always using it, and the few times I asked to borrow it, she'd make such a production about inconveniencing her that I stopped asking. So I took the bus. To school, to my part-time job at a tech repair shop, to everything. And I told myself it didn't matter, that I was becoming self-sufficient, that needing less from my parents was actually making me stronger. College application time revealed the favoritism in even starker terms. Emma had mediocre grades and no particular academic interests, but she wanted to go to the state university where her friends were going, so she could continue having a fun social life. My parents didn't even question it. Of course, they'd pay for her to go wherever she wanted. The fact that she ultimately chose community college instead, because she wasn't ready to move away yet, didn't change their commitment to funding her education entirely. I, meanwhile, had a 4.0 GPA, perfect SAT scores, and had been building businesses since I was 14. I applied to MIT, Stanford, and Harvard, along with some safety schools. When I got into Harvard, fucking Harvard, my parents' reaction was complicated. There was some pride, sure. They could tell their friends their daughter got into Harvard, which sounded impressive at dinner parties. But there was also immediate concern about cost. Could we afford it? Was it really worth it compared to a state school? Maybe I should reconsider and stay local where tuition was cheaper? I sat them down and showed them my financial aid package. Harvard's financial aid for families in our income bracket was actually extremely generous. With the aid package, scholarships I'd won, and money I'd saved from my freelance work and small business ventures, I could cover everything except about $10,000 per year. I asked them if they could help with that $10,000 annually. Not even the full amount, just a portion of it. They'd spent more than that on Emma's car. They were spending similar amounts every year on her community college tuition, her clothes, her social activities, her life. My father said they'd think about it. A week later, they came back and said they could give me $5,000 per year, but I'd need to cover the rest. It wasn't what I'd hoped for, but it was something, and I accepted it and started planning how I'd make up the difference through work and additional scholarships. Except here's what I didn't know at the time. They never actually intended to give me that $5,000 per year. The first semester arrived, and when I asked about the promised contribution, there was always a reason it wasn't quite ready yet. An unexpected expense with the house. Emma needed money for something important. They'd get it to me next month. By the end of my first year at Harvard, I'd received exactly $2,000 from my parents, not the $5,000 promised, and only after multiple uncomfortable conversations, where I had to essentially beg for money, I'd been told I'd receive. So I did what I'd always done. I figured it out myself. I worked, I hustled, I took every freelance programming job I could fit around my classes. I lived on the cheapest meal plan and in the oldest, least expensive dorm. I didn't go out, didn't party, didn't do any of the expensive social activities other Harvard students took for granted. I studied, I worked, and I built. Because here's what my parents never understood about me. I wasn't just smart in an academic sense. I was entrepreneurial. I saw opportunities and I executed on them. During my freshman year, I built an app that helped students manage their course schedules and study groups. It took off on campus, and then at other schools. I monetized it through a small subscription fee and some targeted advertising to education companies. By sophomore year, that app was generating $3,000 per month in revenue. I used that money to cover my expenses, pay back some student loans I'd taken out, and start investing in my next venture, a platform that connected student freelancers with businesses that needed short-term technical projects. That platform grew even faster than the first app. By junior year, I was making roughly $8,000 per month from my two ventures combined. I'd stopped asking my parents for money entirely, not just because I didn't need it anymore, but because every request had been so painful and fraught with judgment about my choices that it wasn't worth the emotional cost. And my parents? They had no idea. They knew I had some app thing and that I was doing computer stuff, but they never asked for details and I never volunteered them. Why would I? They'd made it clear through 20 years of consistent action that Emma's achievements, cheerleading, popularity, eventually graduating community college, mattered more to them than anything I did. You're probably wondering why I maintained any contact with them at all. And honestly, it's a fair question. Part of it was hope. That stupid, resilient hope that if I just achieved enough, if I just became successful enough, they'd finally see me and value me the way I'd always wanted them to. Part of it was that I still loved them despite everything. Because undoing childhood attachment is complicated even when that attachment is to people who consistently fail you. And part of it was just that completely cutting off your family felt like a dramatic step I wasn't quite ready to take. So I stayed in contact, came home for occasional holidays, updated them on surface-level details about my life while keeping the important stuff to myself. And they continued treating me exactly as they always had, as the less important daughter, the one whose achievements didn't quite count, the one who could take the bus while Emma got the car. Which brings us to senior year and that phone call about my graduation. 3 weeks before the ceremony, I called home excited to tell them the date and time, to make sure they'd put it on their calendar, to finally have them present for something that mattered to me. And that's when my mother casually informed me they couldn't come because they were buying Emma a Tesla. "Can't you buy the car a different weekend?" I asked, my voice small and tight. "This is Harvard graduation, Mom. It's kind of a once-in-a-lifetime thing." "The dealership has a specific event that weekend with special pricing," my father explained, his tone suggesting I was being unreasonable. "And Emma has her heart set on the blue color, which is only available through this event. We can watch your ceremony online. I'm sure Harvard live streams it." "They do," I confirmed mechanically. "But that's not the same as being there." "You're 22 years old, Jordan," my mother said, a edge of irritation entering her voice. "You're an adult now. You shouldn't need your parents at everything. Emma's younger, she still needs our support and involvement." I almost laughed. Emma was 18. 4 years younger than me, not 4 years old, but pointing that out would be futile. So I just said okay, and ended the call. I sat in my dorm room for a long time after that conversation, and something shifted in me. Not dramatically, not with anger or tears, but with a quiet, final acceptance. My parents were never going to be the parents I needed them to be. They were never going to prioritize me, celebrate me, show up for me, and I needed to stop expecting them to. But here's what they didn't know, and get ready because this is where everything changes. That graduation ceremony they were skipping, it wasn't just a graduation ceremony. 3 days before the call with my parents, I'd received an email from the dean's office asking me to come in for a meeting. I'd gone to the administration building confused and slightly nervous. Was there some problem with my thesis? Some administrative issue with my graduation? The meeting in the dean's office that day was surreal. I sat in a leather chair across from people whose names I'd seen on buildings and in prestigious publications, trying to understand why they wanted to talk to me. "Ms. Mitchell," the dean continued, "your entrepreneurial work hasn't gone unnoticed. Your 2 platforms, particularly the freelance connector, have been generating significant attention in the tech community. But what really caught our attention was your thesis project." My thesis. I'd spent the past year developing a machine learning algorithm that optimized remote work collaboration, essentially predicting the best team structures and communication, patterns for distributed teams based on personalities, time zones, work styles, and project requirements. It had started as an academic exercise, but had evolved into something much more sophisticated. We've been approached by several venture capital firms who've seen your work presented at conferences. One of the Harvard Corporation members said, "They're interested in funding the commercialization of your thesis project." Very interested. I'd known my thesis was good. My advisor had been enthusiastic about it, and had suggested I present at a few academic conferences. But I hadn't realized it had generated this kind of external attention. "How interested?" I asked, my business instincts kicking in despite my shock. The Technology Innovation Council representative smiled. 3 firms have made preliminary offers. The most serious one is a Series A funding offer of $12 million for a 20% equity stake in a company built around your algorithm, with you as CEO. That values your company at $60 million before you've even officially launched it." The room tilted slightly. $60 million, Series A funding, CEO of my own company, at 22 years old with a Harvard degree that hadn't even been officially conferred yet. "There's more," the dean said. "The Technology Innovation Council wants to feature you in their annual showcase of breakthrough innovations by students under 25. It's held during commencement weekend, and they've asked to make an announcement about your work during the graduation ceremony itself. Obviously, we're incredibly proud and want to celebrate this achievement publicly. What exactly would this announcement entail?" I asked carefully. "During the ceremony, after conferring degrees, the dean of your program will make special remarks recognizing you as this year's recipient of the Innovation Excellence Award. It comes with a $250,000 grant for entrepreneurial ventures and will be announced in front of all graduates, families, and the significant number of media covering the ceremony. We anticipate it will generate substantial press coverage given the impressive valuation of your venture and your age." I sat with this information, my mind racing. My parents had just told me they weren't coming to this ceremony because buying Emma a Tesla was more important. And at this ceremony, I was going to be publicly recognized for building a company valued at $60 million, receiving a $250,000 grant, and likely generating national media attention for my achievement. The irony was so perfect it almost hurt. "I accept," I said simply, "and yes, you can make the announcement during commencement." The rest of that meeting was a blur of logistics and congratulations. They explained that the venture capital firm wanted to meet with me the week after graduation to finalize terms. That Harvard's Office of Technology Development would help me navigate the legal aspects of commercializing research done as a student. That I'd need to prepare brief remarks for the Innovation Excellence Award announcement. I walked back to my dorm in a daze, pulled out my laptop, and did something I hadn't done in months. I calculated my actual net worth. The two platforms I'd been running for the past 3 years had generated approximately $180,000 in profit over that time, most of which I'd saved or invested. My portion of the new venture, even after the VC funding dilution, would be worth roughly $48 million on paper, though of course paper value and actual liquid wealth were different things. The $250,000 grant was real money I'd receive immediately. Add in some smaller investments I'd made and the value of my other intellectual property, and I was looking at a net worth somewhere between $48 or $49 million, with strong potential for that number to increase dramatically if the new company succeeded. At 22 years old, I was essentially a multimillionaire on paper and about to become CEO of a well-funded startup with serious growth potential, and my parents had no idea because they'd never asked, never shown interest, never bothered to understand what I was actually building. I thought about calling them back, telling them about the award and the announcement, and suggesting they might want to reconsider their priorities that weekend. But something stopped me. Maybe it was pride. Maybe it was hurt. Maybe it was just that I wanted them to make their choice without knowing what they were choosing to miss. I wanted their absence to be completely, undeniably their decision, made with full awareness that they were prioritizing a car over their daughter's graduation. So I didn't call. I didn't tell them. I just confirmed that they definitely weren't coming. Arranged for my grandmother, my mom's mother, who'd always been supportive, to attend in their place, and prepared for graduation alone. The next 3 weeks were a whirlwind of finals, thesis defense, preparation for the VC meetings, and practicing my brief remarks for the Innovation Excellence Award announcement. My grandmother flew in 2 days before graduation, and I told her everything about the award, the company valuation, the VC funding, all of it. She listened with tears streaming down her face, not from sadness but from fury at her daughter and son-in-law. They're not coming? They're actually choosing to miss this because of a car for Emma? They made their choice, Grandma. I've stopped being surprised by their priorities. You've built all of this yourself, she said, holding my hands tightly. Everything you've achieved, you did without their support or even their awareness. I'm so proud of you, sweetheart, and I'm so ashamed of my daughter for failing to see what an extraordinary person you are. The morning of graduation, I put on my cap and gown, took photos with my grandmother, and headed to the ceremony with a strange mix of emotions. Excitement for what was coming. Sadness that my parents had chosen to miss it. Relief that I'd stopped needing their approval. And yes, a small, petty part of me that was looking forward to them finding out what they'd missed. The ceremony was held in Harvard Yard. Thousands of graduates in crimson robes, families filling every available seat, cameras everywhere, capturing this moment that marked the transition from student to alum. I sat with my computer science cohort, looking out at the crowd and spotting my grandmother's proud face in the sea of attendees. My phone buzzed. A text from Emma, at the Tesla dealership. This car is amazing. Dad's negotiating the final price. Mom says hi and good luck at your ceremony. Attached was a photo of Emma posing with a blue Tesla Model 3, grinning widely. My parents visible in the background talking to a salesman. Good luck at your ceremony. Like it was a casual school event, rather than graduation from fucking Harvard. I put my phone away and focused on the moment. The ceremony proceeded through speeches and acknowledgments, degrees being conferred, the traditional pomp and circumstance. Finally, the Dean of Computer Science stood to give closing remarks. Before we conclude, he said, his voice carrying across the assembled crowd, I want to recognize an exceptional achievement by one of our graduating seniors. Jordan Mitchell has exemplified the entrepreneurial spirit and innovative thinking that Harvard seeks to cultivate in all students. I saw heads turning, people looking around trying to figure out who Jordan Mitchell was. In the family section, my grandmother was beaming. Over her 4 years here, Jordan has built not one but 2 successful technology platforms while maintaining a perfect 4.0 GPA, the dean continued. More impressively, her senior thesis project, a machine learning algorithm optimizing remote work collaboration, has attracted significant attention from the venture capital community. I'm pleased to announce that Jordan has accepted Series A funding of $12 million for a 20% equity stake in a company she will lead as CEO, valuing her venture at $60 million. Gasps and applause from the crowd, cameras swiveling to find me, my cohort looking at me with new awareness. Most of them knew I was smart and hardworking, but this was next level. In recognition of her extraordinary achievement, the dean went on, the Technology Innovation Council has selected Jordan as this year's recipient of the Innovation Excellence Award, which includes a $250,000 grant to support her entrepreneurial ventures. Jordan, please stand so we can recognize you. I stood, legs shaky, as applause erupted across the yard. Thousands of people clapping, cameras flashing, my grandmother crying happy tears, and my parents. 3 hours away at a car dealership, completely unaware, the dean wasn't done. At just 22 years old, Jordan Mitchell represents the future of innovation, combining technical expertise with business acumen and the courage to pursue ambitious visions. She built her ventures with minimal resources while working multiple jobs to fund her education. She represents exactly the kind of determined, creative thinking that will shape the next generation of technology. Harvard is proud to count her among our alumni, and we look forward to watching her company transform how distributed teams work together. Congratulations, Jordan. The applause continued as I sat back down, overwhelmed. Classmates nearby were congratulating me, asking why I'd never mentioned any of this. Because I didn't need to, I thought. Because I was building something real regardless of whether anyone paid attention. After the ceremony, I was swarmed. Local media covering graduation wanted interviews. Harvard's PR team wanted to schedule photo shoots. VCs who'd heard the announcement wanted to introduce themselves. Fellow graduates wanted to connect about potential collaborations. It was overwhelming and exciting and validating in ways I hadn't fully anticipated. My grandmother fought through the crowd to hug me tightly. Your parents are idiots, she whispered. But you're brilliant, and you're going to be wildly successful. And they're going to regret this day for the rest of their lives. They don't even know yet what they missed, I pointed out. Oh, they're about to find out, she said with a wicked smile, showing me her phone where she'd been live streaming the ceremony on Facebook. I made sure to capture the dean's entire announcement. It's already been shared 43 times by people we know. Your parents' friends are commenting. This is spreading, Jordan. They can't avoid knowing what happened here. I felt a complicated mix of satisfaction and sadness. I'd wanted them here to share this achievement. But since they'd chosen to be elsewhere, at least they'd find out what they'd missed in the most public, undeniable way possible. My phone started buzzing incessantly. Texts, calls, social media notifications. I glanced at the preview messages. Aunt Rachel. OMG Jordan. Saw your grandma's Facebook stream. $60 million? Why didn't anyone tell us? Dad. Jordan, call me immediately. Your grandmother posted something about a company and funding? What's going on? Mom, is what your grandmother posted real? Did you really get $12 million in funding? Why didn't you tell us? Emma, what? People are texting me asking if my sister is a millionaire. What is happening? I didn't respond to any of them, not yet. Because right now, I was surrounded by people who actually valued my achievement, and I wanted to enjoy that feeling without the complicated emotional weight of my family's belated realization. The next few hours were a whirlwind of photos, interviews, celebration dinners with my cohort, and more congratulations than I knew how to process. My phone kept buzzing with increasingly frantic messages from my parents, but I silenced it and focused on the people who'd shown up. It wasn't until later that evening, back in my dorm room with my grandmother, that I finally looked at all the messages. There were dozens, from relatives, from my parents' friends, from people I hadn't heard from in years, all suddenly very interested in my achievement now that it had been publicly announced and had a dollar value attached to it. But most telling were the messages from my parents. They'd gone from confused questions to demands that I call immediately to attempts at damage control with their friends, to finally, hours later, this text from my mother. We made a terrible mistake. We should have been there. We're so sorry. Please call us when you can. We love you and we're so proud of you. We had no idea about any of this. Please give us a chance to explain and make things right. I ignored my parents' calls and messages for 3 days. 3 days during which I was intensely busy with post-graduation activities, meeting with the VC firm to finalize funding terms, working with Harvard's technology transfer office on legal paperwork, doing interviews with tech publications that had picked up the story of a 22-year-old Harvard grad with a $60 million valuation company, and packing up my dorm room to move into a temporary apartment in Cambridge while I figured out my next steps. The story had gotten bigger than I'd anticipated. Harvard senior's thesis becomes $60 million startup was picked up by TechCrunch, then by several major business publications. My LinkedIn was exploding with connection requests, my email was overflowing with interview requests, collaboration pitches, and congratulations from people I'd never met. And my family? They were losing their minds trying to reach me. On day 4 after graduation, my grandmother called. Your parents drove to Cambridge. They're at your dorm right now looking for you. I thought you should know. How did they even know which dorm I lived in? I never told them. They called the Harvard housing office and somehow convinced them it was an emergency, she said with disapproval in her voice. Jordan, they're desperate to talk to you. Not because they suddenly care, but because they're embarrassed. All their friends have seen the news coverage. They're being asked why they weren't at your graduation. They're trying to do damage control. So this isn't about me. It's about them looking bad. Exactly. Which is why you need to decide very carefully how you want to handle this. You don't owe them access to you just because they're embarrassed by their own choices. I thanked her and sat thinking about what to do. Part of me wanted to continue ignoring them indefinitely. Part of me wanted a confrontation where I could finally say everything I'd been holding back for years. Part of me just wanted closure so I could move on with my life without this emotional weight. My phone rang. My father's number. I stared at it for a long moment, then answered. Jordan. Thank God. Where are you? We're at your dorm, but they said you already moved out. We need to talk to you. Please, this is important. What's important, Dad? I asked, my voice flat and emotionless. We need to explain about graduation, about why we weren't there. We made a mistake. We can admit that. But we didn't know about this company thing or the award. You never told us. If we'd known, obviously we would have been there. So you would have come to my graduation if you'd known it was going to be impressive in public. But my actual graduation from Harvard wasn't important enough on its own to skip buying Emma's car. Silence. Then my mother's voice. They'd put me on speaker again. That's not what we're saying. We should have been there regardless. We see that now. But Jordan, why didn't you tell us about this company? About the funding? You've been building all of this, and we had no idea. You never asked, Mom. In 4 years of me being at Harvard, you never once asked detailed questions about what I was working on, what my thesis was about, what my career plans were. You knew I had some app things, but you never cared enough to understand what that meant or what I was building. You didn't know because you didn't want to know. That's not fair, my father protested. You were always so independent, never asked for our help or input. How were we supposed to know you were doing all this if you didn't tell us? This response perfectly encapsulated the problem. They were making my independence, which I'd been forced into by their lack of support, into a justification for their lack of interest. Dad, I invited you to my freshman year project presentation where I showcased my first app. You said you were too busy with work. I sent you articles when my second platform was featured in student publications. You never commented on them. I tried to tell you about my thesis project last Thanksgiving, and you changed the subject after 30 seconds to talk about Emma's new job at the mall. You didn't know about my work because you never prioritized knowing about it. More silence. I could hear them scrambling to figure out how to respond. Where are you right now? My mother finally asked. Can we meet somewhere to talk in person? We drove all this way. I didn't ask you to drive here, I interrupted. You chose to do that, just like you chose to skip my graduation. And now you want me to accommodate your schedule and your need to feel better about your choices? Why should I do that? Because we're your parents. My father's voice rose with frustration. Because family matters, and we deserve a chance to make things right. Family matters, I repeated slowly. That's interesting. Does Emma's Tesla matter more than family? Because that's the choice you made when it counted. We already apologized for that, my mother said, her voice cracking. What more do you want? We made a mistake. We admitted it. We're trying to fix it. Why are you being so difficult about this? And there it was. The thing that had defined my relationship with my parents my entire life. When they hurt me, I was expected to immediately forgive and move on without them having to do any real work or self-reflection. My pain was being difficult. My boundaries were being stubborn. My expectation that they actually change their behavior was being unreasonable. I'm not being difficult, Mom. I'm being someone who finally understands that you're never going to value me the way you value Emma, and I'm done accepting crumbs and pretending that's okay. You want to make things right? Start by actually understanding what you did wrong instead of just being embarrassed that other people know about it. We do understand, my father insisted. We should have been at your graduation. We should have paid more attention to your work. We should have supported you better financially during college. We get it. We're sorry. Now can we please move forward? Why? I asked bluntly. Why do you want to move forward? Is it because you genuinely care about having a relationship with me? Or is it because having a daughter who founded a $60 million company looks impressive to your friends, and you want to be able to claim some credit for my success? The pause before they answered told me everything I needed to know. That's incredibly unfair, my mother finally said. We're your parents. Of course we care about having a relationship with you. And yes, we're proud of what you've accomplished. Why shouldn't we be? Why is it wrong for parents to be proud of their child's success? It's not wrong to be proud, Mom. What's wrong is only being interested in your child when their success is public and impressive. Where was this pride when I was working 2 jobs to pay for Harvard because you couldn't be bothered to follow through on your financial commitment? Where was this interest when I was building my first app and trying to tell you about it? Where was this enthusiasm when I won coding competitions or got internships at major tech companies? You didn't care then because none of it looked impressive enough to your friends. You care now because I'm in the news and people are talking about me. You're twisting everything, my father said angrily. We've always cared about you. We've always loved you. Just because we didn't understand your tech stuff doesn't mean we weren't proud of you. Did you tell people you were proud of me? When your friends asked about your daughters, did you talk about my achievements the way you talked about Emma's? Or was I always the afterthought, the Jordan's doing fine, while you went into detail about every minor thing Emma accomplished? Silence again. They couldn't deny it, because we all knew the truth. Can we just meet in person to talk about this? My mother pleaded. This conversation is too important to have over the phone. I considered it. Part of me wanted to see their faces, to have the satisfaction of saying everything I'd never been able to say growing up. Part of me wanted closure. Part of me just wanted them to really understand what they'd done. Fine, I said finally. Tomorrow at 2 p.m. There's a coffee shop near campus called Brew and Bean. Meet me there. Come alone. No Emma. No bringing other relatives for backup. Just the 3 of us. And Dad, I need you to be prepared to hear some difficult truths without getting defensive or angry. Can you do that? Yes, he said quickly. Yes, we can do that. Thank you for agreeing to meet with us, Jordan. We really do want to make things right. We'll see, I said, and ended the call. The next afternoon, I arrived at the coffee shop 15 minutes early to claim a corner table away from other customers. I wanted this conversation to be private even though part of me wouldn't have minded witnesses. I ordered a coffee I didn't really want, opened my laptop to review some company documents, and waited. My parents arrived exactly on time, looking nervous and out of place in this student coffee shop. My mother's eyes were red like she'd been crying. My father looked older somehow, the weight of their mistake visible in his posture. They sat down across from me, both of them trying to smile. "You look good," my mother started. "Professional, very grown up." I didn't respond to the small talk. "Why are you here?" And I want the real answer, not the answer you think I want to hear. My father sighed heavily. "The real answer? We're here because we realized at your graduation, when we weren't at your graduation, that we failed you. Not just by missing that one event, but systematically, for years. We've prioritized Emma over you in ways that weren't fair or right. We've dismissed your achievements and your interests because we didn't understand them. And we've been confronted with the reality of what you've built in spite of us, not because of us. And it's been devastating to realize what terrible parents we've been to you." It was more honest than I'd expected. I looked at my mother. "Do you agree with that assessment?" She nodded, tears starting to fall. "I've been thinking about so many moments over the years. Times when you tried to show me something you'd built, and I was too busy with Emma's activities. Times when you needed help and I told you to figure it out yourself because I was helping Emma with something. Times when I chose her needs over yours without even questioning whether that was the right choice. Jordan, I failed you. As a mother, I completely failed you." "Yes, you did," I agreed, and watched her flinch at the bluntness. "Both of you did. But here's what I need to understand. Are you sorry because you hurt your daughter? Or are you sorry because you're embarrassed that everyone knows you missed your daughter's Harvard graduation, where she was publicly recognized for building a multi-million-dollar company?" "Both," my father admitted after a pause. "I won't lie to you. Yes, the embarrassment is part of it. When our friends started calling asking why we weren't at your graduation, when they sent us the news articles about your company, when they asked how it felt to have such a successful daughter. Yes, it was humiliating to admit we'd chosen to skip your graduation to buy Emma a car. But Jordan, the embarrassment forced us to confront something we'd been avoiding for years, that we've treated you and Emma completely differently, and that difference has been cruel and unfair to you. Why did you treat us differently?" I asked directly. "Because I need to understand that. You had 2 daughters. Why was one worth investing in and the other wasn't?" My mother looked uncomfortable. "It wasn't conscious. It wasn't like we sat down and decided to favor Emma. But I think if I'm being really honest, Emma was easier. She was interested in things I understood. She needed our help and guidance in obvious ways. She was socially successful in ways that felt familiar to me from my own childhood. You were so independent, so capable, so focused on things I didn't understand like coding and technology. And I think I let myself believe that because you were so capable, you didn't need us as much. That Emma needed our attention and support more because she struggled more. So you punished me for being competent by giving me less support," I said flatly. "It wasn't meant as punishment," my father said. "But yes, I think that's effectively what happened. We invested more in Emma because she seemed to need it more. We didn't realize, or we didn't let ourselves realize, that you needed support too. Just different kinds of support, and that by constantly choosing her needs over yours, we were sending you a message about who we valued more. Listen carefully to what happened next, because this is where I had to make a decision that would affect the rest of my relationship with my family, and I'm still not sure if I made the right choice." I sat looking at my parents across that coffee shop table, watching them squirm with discomfort and regret, and I realized something important. I didn't want to punish them. Despite everything, despite years of being treated as less important, despite the hurt and disappointment and anger I carried, I didn't actually want revenge. What I wanted was something much harder to get. I wanted genuine change and accountability, not just performative apologies. "Here's what I need you to understand," I said carefully. "Saying sorry isn't enough. Being embarrassed isn't enough. Even admitting you failed me isn't enough if nothing actually changes going forward. So before we talk about whether we can rebuild any kind of relationship, I need you to demonstrate that you actually understand what you did wrong. Not just surface level, we should have come to graduation understanding, but deep understanding of the pattern of behavior. Okay, my father said cautiously. Tell us what you need from us. I need you to tell me, specifically, about times you chose Emma over me. Not just the Tesla and the graduation. I need you to remember and acknowledge specific moments when you made me feel like I mattered less. Because you can't fix a pattern you won't acknowledge existed. They looked at each other uncomfortably. My mother spoke first, her voice shaking. The car. When you turned 16 and asked about getting a car like Emma had, we told you we couldn't afford another vehicle. But that wasn't true. We could have managed it if we'd made it a priority. We just didn't want to because it seemed easier to have you share Emma's car or take the bus. And what message did that send me? I prompted. That your convenience and independence mattered less than hers, my mother admitted, tears flowing freely now. That her needs came first and yours were optional. My father continued, clearly struggling. College tuition. We told you we couldn't help much with Harvard because of cost, but we paid Emma's entire community college tuition and all her living expenses without question. And even the small amount we promised you, the $5,000 per year, we didn't follow through on that commitment. We kept making excuses about why we couldn't give you the money, and you had to work multiple jobs to cover what we should have helped with. And what message did that send? I asked again. That your education was less important than hers. That your future mattered less. That you should figure it out on your own while she got our full support. His voice cracked. Jordan, we made you feel like you had to earn everything while Emma got things handed to her, and that was completely unfair. My mother added, your achievements. When you won the coding competition at 16 and got that $1,000 prize, I said, that's nice, and went back to helping Emma pick out a homecoming dress. When you got into Harvard, we spent more time worrying about the cost than celebrating your achievement. Meanwhile, when Emma made the community college honor roll, not even dean's list, just honor roll, we took her out to a fancy dinner and posted about how proud we were on Facebook. And what message? I started. We know, my father interrupted quietly, that your accomplishments didn't matter as much, that we only valued achievements we understood or that fit our definition of success. That Emma's minor victories were worth celebrating, but your major achievements were just expected because you were smart and capable. They were getting it, really getting it, not just performing understanding to make me feel better. Here's what hurts the most, I said, and I felt my own voice starting to shake now. It's not even the big stuff, though that hurt plenty. It's all the small moments where you could have shown you cared and you chose not to. When I tried to tell you about my thesis project at Thanksgiving, and you changed the subject after 30 seconds. When I sent you articles about my platforms being featured in publications and you never acknowledged them. When I called excited about an internship offer and you barely reacted. Every single time I reached out trying to connect with you about my life and you couldn't be bothered to engage because it wasn't interesting to you or it wasn't about Emma. We didn't realize, my mother whispered. We didn't realize how much those moments mattered or how much we were hurting you. That's the problem, Mom. You didn't think about how your actions affected me. You just did what was easiest, or what served Emma's needs, and you never stopped to consider what message that was sending to your other daughter. And I adapted. I became independent and self-sufficient because I had to, not because I wanted to. I learned not to expect support from you because you consistently failed to provide it. And then you used my independence as justification for giving me even less support. My father put his head in his hands. We've been terrible parents to you. I don't know how to fix this or make it right. We missed so many opportunities to support you, to celebrate you, to just be present in your life. And now you've built this incredible company and career completely without us. And we don't even have the right to be proud because we didn't contribute anything to your success. You did contribute something, I said quietly. You taught me that I couldn't rely on anyone but myself, that I had to work harder and achieve more just to get a fraction of the recognition Emma got for minor accomplishments. That my worth wasn't inherent. I had to prove it constantly. Those aren't the lessons you meant to teach, but they're the lessons I learned. And in some twisted way, they made me stronger and more driven. So, I guess I should thank you for that, even if it wasn't your intention. Don't. my mother said sharply. Don't thank us for failing you. Don't make what we did okay by finding a silver lining. We hurt you, consistently and significantly, for your entire life. The fact that you succeeded anyway doesn't make our behavior acceptable. I was surprised by her vehemence. So what are you asking from me? Forgiveness? Reconciliation? A chance to pretend the past 22 years didn't happen? I don't know what we're asking for, my father admitted. I don't even know if we deserve a chance to make things right. But Jordan, you're our daughter. Despite everything we've done wrong, we love you. And if you're willing to give us an opportunity to build a better relationship going forward, not trying to fix the past, but building something new, we'll do whatever it takes. I sat with that for a long moment. What about Emma? Because here's the thing. I don't actually blame her for your favoritism. She didn't ask to be treated better than me. That was your choice. But she's also benefited from that favoritism her entire life, and she's going to need to understand that dynamic if we're all going to move forward as a family. Emma knows, my mother said. We talked to her before driving here. She's actually the one who pointed out a lot of the specific examples we just shared with you. She said she's always been aware that we treated you differently, but never said anything because it benefited her. She wants to apologize to you herself for going along with it and not advocating for you when she should have. She's also dealing with some hard realizations, my father added. Your success has made her question her own choices and direction. Seeing what you built while working your way through, Harvard while she was taking 3 years to finish a 2-year degree at community college. It's forced her to confront some truths about herself that aren't comfortable. That's not my responsibility to manage, I said firmly. If Emma's feeling inadequate or questioning her choices, that's something she needs to work through herself or with you. I'm not going to minimize my achievements or feel guilty about my success to make her feel better about herself. We're not asking you to, my mother assured me. We're just explaining that she's doing her own reflection on all of this, and she wants to talk to you when you're ready. I nodded slowly. Okay, here's what I'm willing to do. I'm willing to try rebuilding relationships with you, but it's going to be on very different terms than before. I'm not going to be the daughter who's always accommodating everyone else's needs and accepting whatever scraps of attention you throw my way. If we're going to have relationships, they need to be based on genuine mutual respect and effort. What does that look like practically? My father asked. It means you actually show interest in my life and work. It means you make efforts to understand what I'm building instead of dismissing it because it's tech stuff. It means you celebrate my achievements the way you've always celebrated Emma's. It means you show up when you say you'll show up. It means you respect my time and my boundaries. And it means if I see you falling back into old patterns of favoritism or dismissal, I'm done. Permanently. No more chances. We can do that, my mother said firmly. We will do that. Jordan, I know we don't deserve another chance, but if you're willing to give us one, we won't waste it. What about the financial stuff? My father asked hesitantly. We owe you money. The portion of the $5,000 annual commitment we never followed through on. The difference in what we spent on Emma's education versus yours. We should pay you back, I almost laughed. Dad, I'm about to be CEO of a company valued at $60 million. I don't need your money, but if you want to make amends financially, you could set up college funds for future grandchildren, or donate to scholarships for students who are working their way through school like I did. Make your money mean something good instead of just trying to buy forgiveness. He nodded. We'll do that. Both of those things. We sat in silence for a moment, the weight of everything that had been said settling over us. I have a meeting in 30 minutes, I said finally, starting to pack up my laptop. With the VC firm that's funding my company, I need to go. Can we stay in touch? My mother asked tentatively. Can we call you sometimes or visit or take you to dinner? Yes, I said after a pause. But Mom, Dad, understand that this is probationary. You're going to have to consistently prove over time that you've actually changed, not just said the right words in one difficult conversation. I'm not going to immediately trust you or act like everything's fine. You're going to have to earn back a relationship with me through sustained effort and changed behavior. Can you accept that? Yes, they both said at once. Okay, then we'll try. I stood to leave, and my mother stood too, clearly wanting to hug me but uncertain if I'd accept it. I let her briefly, then stepped back. I'll call you this weekend, I told them. We can figure out next steps then. I left the coffee shop and walked toward my meeting, my mind spinning with everything that had just happened. I'd done something that 3 days ago I would have sworn I'd never do. I'd given my parents another chance. Not because they'd earned it or deserved it, but because I'd decided that forgiveness was a choice I could make for myself, not a gift I was giving them. Want to know what happened next in this story? Hit subscribe because the next 6 months brought plot twists I never saw coming, including Emma's surprising transformation and a family crisis that would test whether my parents' promises of change were real. Over the following months, my parents did something I hadn't expected. They actually followed through. My father started reading tech publications to understand my industry. My mother asked detailed questions about my company and remembered the answers. They came to visit Cambridge and took genuine interest in my work. They started treating me like they actually valued having a relationship with me. Emma reached out too, and we had a long, difficult conversation where she acknowledged all the ways she'd benefited from their favoritism and apologized for never speaking up. She was struggling. Her Tesla was already in need of expensive repairs. Her mall job was unfulfilling, and watching my success had forced her to confront that she'd coasted through life on our parents' support without building real skills or direction. We weren't close, but we were starting to build something more honest. 6 months after my Harvard graduation, my company officially launched. The algorithm I'd developed was being adopted by major corporations to optimize their remote work teams. Revenue was exceeding projections. I was featured in Forbes 30 Under 30 list. My parents attended the launch party, not as honored guests, but as regular attendees who were genuinely proud and supportive without trying to take credit for my success. My grandmother pulled me aside at that launch party and whispered, "I'm proud of you for giving them another chance. I'm even more proud of you for doing it on your terms without compromising your boundaries. You've grown into an extraordinary woman, and I don't just mean professionally." 2 years later, my company was valued at over $200 million. I'd made the Forbes list again. My parents had consistently shown up for me in ways they never had before. Emma had gone back to school and was working toward becoming a teacher, something she was genuinely passionate about rather than just coasting. Were things perfect? No. Did old patterns sometimes resurface? Yes. But when they did, I addressed them immediately, and my parents actually listened and corrected course. They'd learned, slowly, imperfectly, but genuinely, to value both their daughters equally, and to show up for both of us. The Tesla my parents bought Emma instead of attending my Harvard graduation, it got totaled in an accident a year later. The graduation they missed? That was captured in photos and video that documented one of the most important moments of my life, a moment they can never get back. They learned an expensive lesson that weekend, that sometimes what you choose to miss is more important than what you choose to attend, that relationships require consistent investment, not just showing up for the impressive moments, that your children won't wait forever for you to realize their value. I learned something too, that you can succeed without your family's support, but succeeding with it is better. That forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting or pretending hurt didn't happen, that second chances are gifts you give yourself as much as you give them to others, and that sometimes the people who hurt you can actually change if they're truly willing to do the work. If you made it to the end of this story, thank you for listening. Drop a comment and let me know. Would you have given your parents a second chance, or would you have walked away permanently? There's no right answer. Everyone's situation is different, and everyone has to make the choice that serves their well-being. And remember, your worth isn't determined by whether your family recognizes it. Build something so impressive that their approval becomes irrelevant. That's the real victory. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this story, subscribe for more tales about building success on your own terms, setting boundaries with toxic family dynamics, and choosing yourself when others won't choose you. You're not alone in this journey. Your achievements matter, even if the people who should celebrate them don't. Keep building. Keep growing. Keep proving them wrong. What are you going to do? My grandmother asked gently. I thought about it. About the years of being dismissed and devalued. About being told to take the bus while Emma got cars. About them skipping this day because buying her a Tesla was more important. About all the achievements they'd missed because they never bothered to pay attention. I don't know yet, I admitted. But I'm not going to respond tonight. They made their choice, and they're going to have to sit with it for a while before I decide whether to give them another chance." "Good," my grandmother said firmly. "Let them understand what they lost. Let them really feel it. And Jordan, whatever you decide, know that you don't owe them forgiveness just because they're suddenly paying attention now that your success is public and impressive to their friends." She was right. But the question of what to do about my parents, whether to let them back in or cut them off entirely, would haunt me for weeks to come, because the situation was about to get even more complicated in ways I couldn't have predicted. Want to know what happened when my parents finally tracked me down? Subscribe and stay tuned, because the confrontation that followed revealed truths about my family that I'd never fully understood. Instead, I walked into a room with the dean of the computer science department, 2 members of the Harvard Corporation, and a representative from the Technology Innovation Council. "Ms. Mitchell," the dean had begun with a smile, "we have some rather extraordinary news. And listen closely, because what they told me in that room was about to make my parents' decision to skip my graduation the most expensive mistake they'd ever made, and I'm not talking about the cost of the Tesla.